Won't you wear my ring on your finger, proving that love is ours to share? You're mine to have and hold, just like this ring of gold you wear.
Hi, I'm Tim Rice. Bobby Darin, a man in a hurry. Bobby lived his life in a kind of creative panic because he'd been assured by doctors that his life would be a short one. And it turned out to be true. According to the official Darin archivist, Jimmy Scalia, performing at all could be a struggle.
Because, you have to remember, Bobby had a bad heart. Lung capacity and what it takes for you to really belt something out. The thing of a great professional is if you have limitations, you know your limitations, you perfect your stronger points to carry over what might be weaker, and the public never senses where your weak points were.
But even while making those adjustments, Bobby was moving his life along. He had to cram several careers into a short space, and from the start they overlapped. He started out as part of the Elvis generation, singing songs like the ones we just heard, his own composition, Wear My Ring. Then, while his public was still getting used to him, he made an album called That's All, containing two swing-style classics, Mac the Knife and Beyond the Sea, a French song by Charles Trenet, with English words by Jack Lawrence.
I met Jack Lawrence. I was fortunate enough to meet him, and we just, I chatted with him briefly. This was a number of years back. And yes, it did make a lot of money. And out of all the renditions he's heard, he loves Bobby's rendition. And he loves Bobby because Bobby helped put that song on the map, so to speak. And, I find it kind of interesting that years ago, back in 1959, when the That's All album was released, Mac the Knife was the first single, was the first cut on that album, on the first side. And it was obviously a very strong song. Somehow or another, it seems years later now, Beyond the Sea has kind of surpassed Mac the Knife. Not to, take any light away from Mac the Knife, but it seems like Beyond the Sea has become almost as, if not a little bit more recognizable to a lot of people, or familiar to a lot of people than it had years ago. So I'm sure that makes Jack Lawrence very happy as well.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me, my lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing. Somewhere beyond the sea, she's there watching for me. If I could fly like birds on high, then straight to her arms I'd go sailing. It's far beyond the star, it's near beyond the moon. I know beyond a doubt my heart will lead me there soon. We'll meet beyond the shore, we'll kiss just as before. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing.
It took a certain courage for Atlantic Records, who'd thought they had a rock star on their books, to put out a record so clearly in the Sinatra nightclub tradition. But the late Ahmet Ertegun, co-founder of Atlantic, didn't look for compliments.
I don't want to take that kind of credit. I think Bobby, if I hadn't done it, somebody else would have heard him and had similar success.
But now, in mid-1959, the public was perplexed about Bobby Darin. Had the whole rock and roll thing been a bluff or a put-on? Was this new retro style, using a studio band very like Sinatra's, the real Darin? Or was he presenting it just to prove that he could? People were looking for authenticity, which wasn't a question that bothered Bobby overmuch at this stage. His closest advisors were delighted with the move he'd made. Harriet Wasser, known as Hesh, his publicist and confidant, had no time for rock, and neither had the man she'd just introduced into Bobby's life, Steve Blauner, who became Darin's manager. When he first saw Darin perform, Blauner's reaction was a mixed one.
Bobby was the opening act. That's how low on the totem pole he was. And he comes out on the stage, he hits the stage singing music I couldn't stand, but I went, oh my God. And I went back to the office the next day, and I went up and down the aisles, and I kept saying that this kid can sing one note legit, he'll be one of the biggest stars of all time, and they all laughed at me.
Some of the most famous artist manager teams are, like, for example, Elvis and the Colonel. I mean, the Colonel's synonymous to the Elvis Presley name. You know, if you mention the Colonel to just about any Elvis fan, they'll know, you know, who the Colonel is. I think it's the same thing with Blauner. There was definitely this bond, this brotherhood, this trust. And unlike Elvis and the Colonel, Blauner and Darin would go, you know, at it time to time. They didn't know who had the bigger ego, the manager or the artist.
I had moved from New York to California. I was still with GAC. When he'd come to California, he'd sleep on the couch in the living room. So we were buddies, and one day I was driving down Sunset Boulevard, and he asked me to manage him, and I almost crashed the car.
Steve Blauner was mainly interested in Darin as a live performer. He admits today that he watched harder than he listened.
I wanted him to be the white Sammy Davis. When he went to the Copa the first time, he did a dance number that I convinced him to do. It was sort of corny, but, you know, with a sting and a hat. But, you know, and he played the instruments, and I had him do impressions and so forth. So I never paid too much attention about his singing. Years after he died, when I start to listen to his stuff, I look up and I'll be sitting reading, and maybe some of his will be on, and God damn, he could sing.
Living for you is easy living, it's easy to live when you're in love, and I'm so in love. There's nothing in life but you.